First, I want to take you back to the beginning of your football career. And I know you had the distinct pleasure of being the driver for Bill Walsh early on in your career. And I just want to take you back and just kind of talk to us about those car rides and just kind of your indoctrination into the NFL. Just tell us a little bit about those car rides with Coach Walsh.
Well, I think that anytime you start a job, you always start on the ground floor. And I was fortunate enough that my ground floor actually was the penthouse because I was able to drive him around. And, and the timing was perfect. Had I been driving him around today, we probably wouldn't even have had a conversation. He would have been on the cell phone. He would have been doing something else. But back in 1984, we didn't have satellite radio. We didn't have cell phones. We just had two people in a car, and you were either going to not talk or talk. I mean, that was the choice. And unfortunately, he was comfortable enough to talk to me. And then I got brave enough, never comfortable, brave enough to ask him questions.
And what type of questions were you asking him? Was it about football in particular? Was it about team building? Like, what were those conversations like?
Well, I mean, I knew nothing. So it was, I was a blank tape. So I was just trying to fill up the tape. I was just trying to ask him everything, why we did things. What was that, really, and then ask him about his career. Like, what would he do if he were me? What would he do if he were me again? And so I treated him like he was my father in the sense that I asked him for advice in a way to where I felt comfortable that he would offer that advice.
Yeah, and I know you've talked about Tom Peters, and I think these car rides were kind of your introduction to Tom Peters, and so it seems like it covered everything from career development to football to even growing as a person.
Well, I think he was so well-rounded. Coach Walsh was so well-rounded. I mean, he was into the leadership. He was into all that. So it made it a conversation that was easy, and comfortable. And so when we did talk about Tom Peters or Warren Bennis or Peter Drucker, people that I had no idea who he was talking about, trust me, I knew nothing about them, that entered me into a world that I couldn't go Google them at home. I had to literally go research them. And, I was good at going to the library when you had to go to the library. I mean, I can remember in 84, 86, we drafted a player that had a steroid problem, and we really didn't know anything about steroids. And so he told me to go to the library and research steroids. So I could do that. I was comfortable, going somewhere and trying to find the information, even though I didn't know anything about it.
The things that really intrigues me about Coach Walsh is his standards of performance. And I was fortunate enough to coach with someone, Frank Gann Sr., who was a longtime NFL coach, and he had his habits that he kind of taught our teams. And so how did Coach Walsh get his team to adhere to these principles on a daily basis?
He first viewed himself as a teacher. So he taught the habits. They were always in front of us. He would have regular meetings with every department, whether it was the accounting department or whether it was the equipment staff. And he reminded them of the standard of performance. And really, if you go back to the book that I'm working on now, so the new book that I'm writing is about the Hall of Fame and about the players and the coaches in the Hall of Fame. And I think when you go back and study the great coaches and where does coaches originate from, where is the tree? There's essentially four trees. And Paul Brown's tree really was about the organizational methodology of the NFL, of coaching. And I think that is, and I call him in my book, I call Paul Brown the Bill Gates of the NFL. He developed the operating system, and Coach Walsh made it better. We all tend to think that an entrepreneur is somebody who has an idea that's revolutionized and but we know that Ray Kroc didn't invent the hamburger stand. He just made it better. And that's what Coach Walsh did.
And this is actually not commonplace in the NFL, having this organizational system. A lot of times we hire defensive coordinators or offensive coordinators because they're smart with that particular aspect of the game, but it's kind of the overall view of the organization that is really critical when we're talking about success as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to pluck somebody from one system of culture and put them into yours and think you're going to get the same results. Unless the culture is the same, it's hard. Unless the foundation's the same, it's hard. think that's a mistake people make quite often.